All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the LIberalish podcast. I'm your host, Keith. This is episode 23. I'm joined today by my co-host, got the lovely and beautiful Carly here, Ryan, who just returned from holiday, and we got Marcus. So once again, I just want to thank our first-time listeners, our returning listeners. Thank you for listening to our podcast and for your support. If you like the podcast, please go share it to some friends, help us grow. So today we're going to talk about headlines. We're also going to talk about the Democratic leadership, and we're going to pass the mic over to Marcus to discuss the wealth tax, and then a couple of off-topic conversations in regards to Joe Biden's violent dogs that he has in the White House.
This isn't a dog-friendly podcast.
Those were former. They're police dogs, and It does not surprise me that these police dogs violently attack people. So, shame on Biden and shame on his two dogs there.
I don't like this take at all. We'll get into it later.
All right. So before we kick things off, it is like the 1-year anniversary of Breonna Taylor's untimely passing. So definitely rest in peace to her. I did see on CNN over here that her boyfriend is filing a lawsuit against the city. I hope he wins.
And they just dismissed all his charges.
Dismissed all his charges. I think it was like permanent or whatever. So
yeah. It's crazy. It's really crazy. It's been a year. It's actually crazy. It's been a year since COVID. It's been a year since Breonna Taylor. But I mean, it's actually kind of funny to me how it's been a year, and you would think like within a year, because within a year a lot can happen, but at the same time I feel like nothing has happened. And that goes on both ends. That goes on like the COVID tip and Breonna Taylor. So I hope he gets some justice for himself and for Breonna Taylor after his lawsuit, because it's definitely well overdue and deserved.
Yeah, no, for sure. And also, I was just seeing here the other day that there was a $27 million settlement. I think the city of Minneapolis did with George Floyd's family.
And it's sick. It's crazy how I feel like a lot of them would rather these large payouts than just correcting the issue to begin with. You wouldn't have to keep paying people if you would just fix the issues. And again, a part of me is they're not going to, because to them it's really not that big of a deal. But at the same time, it's really completely unnecessary. It's really unfortunate because none of this has to happen, and it doesn't do anything for his family. His daughter grows up without a father. His mother does. His family doesn't get him back. And I think a lot of people think throwing money at a situation is some sort of justice. But I think they would just rather have their family member back. I think she would rather have her father back. His mother would rather have her son back instead of $27 million.
Yeah, for sure. And if you look in Kentucky, they're doubling down, it seems like. Because I just saw they're going to pass a law. There's a bill in the Kentucky Senate to make it illegal to insult a cop.
What?
Yes.
Is that?
No,
is this for
real? These are the priorities in Kentucky. Come on.
Yeah. These are the priorities in Kentucky.
This is what you're worried about. One of the poorest states in the country, one of the some of the worst infrastructure, one of the worst educational systems in the country, on the state side, and this is what we're concerned about. Come on.
That's the issue with Republicans. They always focus on these stupid ass fucking issues that nobody really cares about.
Social cultural stuff, man.
Yeah, that's been a thing.
Yeah. That's a freaking that law flies in the face, directly in the face of the First Amendment. So that's gonna get thrown out immediately if we have sensibles. Because some way could argue that because it's a.
And also, like Marcus said, it's one of the poorest states in the country, and I would feel as residents of Kentucky, I would be outraged. I would really actually be pissed off. We have more pressing issues than shit like this. What about this? It's sad because it's I think what about the shit that's really pressing? What about us? What about our everyday lives? What are you doing to better the state? What are you doing to better the lives of the people that live here? And your focus is, instead of fixing the problems that exist, you want to make it illegal to insult. Get the fuck out of here. This is crazy.
Yeah, my whole thing is to being a cop is a job. It's a 9 to 5
that you
job
chose.
that someone chooses to do. It's to me, it's no different than being a teacher, or school teacher, or being like the garbage guy collecting the trash, right? It's a city or state job that you choose to do. It's not like a job that you're holier than thou.
But a lot of people feel like if they have jobs, and I think this is my issue with people who have jobs where their life is quote unquote put on the line. Yes. But you knew that when you signed up for the job. And I think for you to kind of walk around as if someone owes you for something that you chose to do, and no offense, with a job means that you're compensated for it. It's not like you're doing it. Some people say they joined to be a cop because they wanted to protect and serve, or they wanted to be, a role model, or whatever the case may be. Okay, cool. But it's still a job where you show up when you're supposed to show up, you get paid for it, and you go home when you on your days off. It, like you said, it's no different than a teacher. And I think for you to put yourself, and for people to expect us to put them on a pedestal because of that, is kind of like asinine to me. Because it doesn't give you the right to just be like a shitty human being at the same time, because you're risking your life.
Yeah, even like the whole like risking your life thing, like being a cop is not the most dangerous job in America. And I think about half of police officer deaths are due to vehicular accidents.
Yeah.
So, look, like there's more jobs that are more dangerous than being a cop.
Yes, like what about firefighters? Like what about doctors? Like doctors, it's not at an alarming rates, but doctors can sometimes be like, look at the nurses and the doctors who have been working throughout this whole virus. They're putting their life on the line to save people, and they know that, and they do their job because that's what they're there for. But it doesn't have to come at the cost of harming or hurting other people, or making other people feel uncomfortable around you.
Yeah, and like I think this should, like, both white America could try to see this a little bit, because this is not like a race thing. This is like you're giving an armed individual so much power over your day-to-day life. Like, what is insulting a cop? So if I just like walk by and I don't give like a head nod to a cop, am I insulting him or her? You know what I mean? It's like, what is that? What does that even mean? Like, you're giving one person.
Or if I call you a pig.
Right. Or, what if I have like a bumper sticker that says like Biden Harris? Even that.
Is that offensive? Yeah. Like, where's the line? Where's the line?
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Like, what if I have like a Red Lives Matter bumper sticker on my car, right? Does that piss off a cop now because I value firefighters more?
Yeah, it's a slippery slope. And like, like Ryan said, it's definitely a slippery slope, because it's the same. It's interesting to me because it's the same people who argue about the First Amendment that are actually doing something that kind of contradicts the First Amendment. So
it's never about the First Amendment though with these people. It's always about this makes me feel bad.
Yeah. So
they try to bring it up. They try to use that
as
an appeal, but it's really just, this makes me feel bad. So guess what? It has to be wrong. It should be illegal.
If you're going to use something as a defense, then you have to be able to understand that if it's presented from the opposite angle, you also can't get offended. So if you're telling me that like, it's my First Amendment, it's my First Amendment right to say whatever I want to do, say whatever I want to say, and be as offensive and harmful and hurtful as I want to be, you can't then, when someone says the same thing or insults you, and then you're like, well, that's offensive and that hurts my feelings, I don't like that. And then now you're trying to make it like that's literally what you're doing. So it's like, it's funny to me how people try to flip stuff.
Yeah.
So that it works in their favor. But then when you try to represent it from the opposite, it's like, oh no, I don't get it. Or it's not the same, but it's different. And it's like really not.
Yeah. It's kind of like the stand your ground laws in Kentucky, right? So like Breonna Taylor's boyfriend thought that intruders were breaking into the house, and rightfully so, fired off a warning shot, right? Or he thought it was a warning shot. Now, those exact same people who are like defending like the Second Amendment rights are going to be the exact same people that said that he cost Breonna Taylor's life for doing that.
One thing you're going to learn about like the first couple of amendments is that when white people view it, it isn't being viewed.
There's different rules for white people, or at least they want to believe that. Like it's not the same when we do it. Like when in actuality it is.
When Walter Scott died, and the NRA said nothing. He was legally carrying his firearm. we let the cop know that I had the firearm on me, and nothing happened. Like, the cop ended up just walking away. Like,
Was that the
didn't know where
dude
murder.
in Minnesota?
I think it
That was
was.
North Carolina. Walter Scott.
Was it Walter Scott?
Walter Scott. Or was it Laquan? Was it Laquan McDonald?
Nah, it was the
Or
dude in the car. It was.
oh, that's how you know there's been too many of these, by the way.
There's
But
been too
That's
many of
sad,
these.
yeah.
Yeah, there's been too many of
Walter
these.
Scott got shot in his back. There's another. It's like Alton's. This is Turner.
Philando Castile.
Castile.
Was
Yep.
the-
Philando
Yeah,
Castile.
yeah,
Yep.
okay, yeah.
Wow. It's so much. It's so much. Like, you really gotta, like, wow. Like, yeah, Philando Castile was in his car. Like, he had a legal
But the
permit. So the
interesting
cop know that everything. Yo, I have it on me. I'm reaching for it, and he
Mhm.
thought the cop still, like, perceived him as a threat and
Yeah.
shot him. Like, and most of these, and it hurts more when it's the people of color that does this, because in Philando Castile case, it was a Hispanic officer, that did it. And you
Yeah.
really got to sit and think about it. Like, that's why when black people
That's
say they don't
exactly
believe,
why I
they
don't
don't
like the
believe.
term people of color,
Yep.
because it's
Right.
not the same for us. Like, and I understand this unity when it comes to marginalized communities, because if you look at it, yeah, do people of color do we have a different reality from, white people? Of course. But I do believe that it's a scale, and we're really the only people that are affected in the ways that we are. And so I don't always see it that way. Like, a lot of people will be like, oh, like, that was another person of color. And it's like, but do they believe that? Because a lot of, like, some people of color, like other like racial groups and ethnic groups will try to separate themselves. Like, oh, to align themselves more with, like, I guess, white privilege, or to kind of escape the reality of the fact that it's like, you're not too much better than us, or they try to act like they're better than us, but you're not. Like, and I feel like I felt the same thing about, George Zimmerman, when everybody was like, oh, like, he was a person of color, but it's like, did he think that? Or did he see
George
it the way
Zimmerman
that
still thinks he's a white man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
he thought he was a white dude. Yeah, that
Because they think like, oh, if we separate ourselves from black people, and it's sometimes it's an assimilation type of situation, where if, like, we assimilate or try to, get closer to white people, or separate ourselves from, like, white people will see us differently. But it's like, at what cost? Like, why does it have to be like us that you have to shit on to, and I think that's an unfortunate situation, where it's like, if everyone just kind of lived like with good intentions and just aim to be like good people regardless of, like, race, then I feel like this world would be a better place. But I mean, that's hopeful thinking, and that's a fantasy land, but that's how I feel about it. I just feel like sometimes if you just remove race from it and just be like, yo, I'm a human being, like, how would you feel if this was done to you? We might get somewhere.
No, 100% agreed. But speaking of hopeful thinking, we had a really good pre-production conversation about New York's very own Andrew Cuomo. So it just came out that New York's two senators, Schumer and Gillibrand, have now called for Cuomo to resign. However, Cuomo is not going to resign. Or actually, let me rephrase that statement. Cuomo has said he's not going to resign yet. So let me ask the pilot question. Do we think Cuomo is going to resign? Or if not, do we think Cuomo is going to get reelected when his terms ends next year?
I mean, I think that I don't think that he's going to. I don't think he's going to resign. I think that he's going to kind of fight this thing as much as he possibly can. I think that's for the Dem side that they've. There's a couple of things happening here. I think one is that Donald Trump had a slew of sexual assault allegations go against him, and he had zero repercussions for it. And I think that there's this kind of what about ism kind of dynamic taking place right now, where like. Cuomo doesn't feel like he should have to pay for these things that he sees as kind of like these harmless incidents, which is not the case. Like he should definitely be like held to account for these. Right. And I think that he's but his mindset seems to be that he's just going to kind of like fight these things and hold on. Now, what he should do is say that he's not going to run for another term. And I think that will kind of make this go away. I think because he announced that he's going to run again, I think that now that kind of creates a situation where people do want to hold him to account and say, you know what, we can't have this monster continue to stay in power. I think that's so if he runs again, I think he would lose. I think if he's smart, he'll just kind of bow out and pass the six to somebody else in 2022. But I mean, if he can weather these calls for resigning, who knows? Maybe he'll pull like a reverse Al Franken, who's another person who had similar allegations go against him and was forced out of office. I think that this is he can say, like, you know what, you guys forced him out. I'm not going to be an Al Franken again. I'm going to stay and fight this thing and do what I can in this job, because he's a bully and he's never been kind of forced to, kind of deal with the fallout from the way that he carries himself. And that's really popular for a lot of people for some reason.
I also think it's really dangerous. That's also a very dangerous rhetoric that a lot of people kind of have been like using to kind of, I guess, justify or understand why he hasn't resigned, is that Donald Trump kind of had similar allegations. And I think it's a slippery slope, because maybe if we penalize people for these type of things or held them accountable, a lot of people wouldn't feel so comfortable having positions of power, knowing that they've done these things, or that there are people walking around accusing them of these things. And I said it last week. I don't think he's going to resign. And I think it's he's going to try to at least get through his term. I don't know how it's going to play out for his next term. I don't really see it happening, because again, I think these type of allegations really, like, I don't know, because Donald Trump kind of got away with it, but at the same time, I think a lot of people are kind of like a little fed up with like allegations like this, especially nowadays. But I also think, plus that and the nursing home situation put together, is like really just leaving a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth. So I don't know. I don't think he's gonna resign, but I also don't think he's gonna get reelected.
I think he's gonna get impeached.
Yeah, I think that's the more likely scenario here, Ryan. I think that the legislature in New York has to move to impeach him at some point.
I mean, the majority, Democrats have majority, like a near super majority in both houses. I mean, Republicans didn't really like Cuomo in the first place, so like it's going to be easy to impeach him than try to force him to resign, because he won't willingly step down. And I think what's getting really overlooked right now is the fact that he was really sending old people to die in nursing homes, and that's some tough shit, man. Like people, grandparents, people like who are regular folks, you were sending them to open hospital beds, you were sending them back to the thing, knowing they have COVID, knowing it's a super spreader living situation for these old people who had no choice. And you thought about the numbers, as the numbers getting worse. Like that's some heartless behavior right there. Like,
and think about all the people who may or may not come to find out that maybe one of their loved ones was like in this type of situation. Like maybe they were one of the ones that was sent to these nursing homes. And I can't help but to imagine, like, it's bad enough that a lot of these people at the beginning of the first surge were kind of like dying alone. They didn't have anybody around them, like their family couldn't visit them. A lot of people were saying their goodbyes like over the phone via Zoom and stuff. Only to come to find out, maybe a few like months later, a year later, that it was because of, what Cuomo did. And I think that that's just that's a horrible gut punch on top of the fact that you lost someone to begin with. Yeah. So.
And to find out that it could all be been avoided.
Yeah. Especially for someone who was kind of praised at the beginning of this whole thing for how he was handling the COVID situation. Like everybody was so like, even people from across the, like, oh, I wish I lived in New York. New York is so lucky to have a governor like Andrew Cuomo. And it's just really sad that it's coming, it's kind of crumbling.
If you read the New York Times did a great article about the rise and fall of Cuomo, and they basically like he used to, like, after these press conferences, go check his approval ratings. People check on his approval rating. When the whole thing was over, like when he gave his last real update, like he had like a celebration about the way they handled the crisis, like it, and it was toasting to all of that. Just imagine somebody toasting to your dead grandparents.
He wrote a whole book based on how great his leadership was during this whole COVID thing. Like there are people saying
he wrote a whole book about this.
Yes, he did.
No, he has a book touting his leadership about how great he was.
Life really comes at you fast.
All right, there are people saying, "Oh, maybe he should be the Democratic nominee. He should be the vice president at least, like because of his leadership during this."
Yeah,
thing.
people were definitely calling for him to run for the president. Yeah, I remember when we were in quarantine and he used to have his press conferences, like where he would talk to the media and stuff. And I just remember like watching the news and just seeing like people online and stuff, people who weren't even living in New York, who really were like, "Oh, I don't even live in New York," and I tune into. Listen to Governor Cuomo talk about, COVID, because I'm just so impressed and proud of how he's handling this. Lo and behold, you come to find out that he's done some really nasty things. And I don't know how you kind of explain it away. Like, I really don't get how he's going to explain himself out of this type of situation, because a lot of people are and a lot of people were just genuinely unhappy with how, the separation that happened when people were getting sick with COVID in the hospital. Like, people not being able to visit their pregnant loved ones who were giving birth. You couldn't visit people in the ICU. You couldn't go to the hospital. You kind of just couldn't do anything. You were helpless. And then that's sad enough. And then on top of that, you find out this was all for no reason. It didn't have to be like this. And if I would have known, I would have, if I would have known sooner, maybe I could have done something about it. It really didn't have to be this way. And I'm going to keep saying it. It was completely unnecessary. I really don't understand the purpose of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm leaning more towards what Ryan was saying. I think that if the New York legislature doesn't move to impeach him, I see Cuomo running again. I see Cuomo itching out a win. I just don't know who's going to run up against Cuomo. I don't see a Republican beating Cuomo in New York. Who's going to primary against Cuomo in the Democratic primaries? We saw what happened with Cynthia Nixon. I was gonna say her. She can again. I just don't. I think Cuomo's still people like him in New York still.
People still like him.
Mayor de Blasio is going to run against Cuomo.
But you want to know something about it?
Mayor de Blasio is having such a good time. Sorry.
I would actually the spite vote for de Blasio just to get him out of New York City.
But then again,
he can't run again for mayor. So this is his last term. Sorry, Carlye, but
no,
de
you're
Blasio
fine.
Can't run again for mayor. So after this, I don't know what he's actually doing after this, because the mayor election, this last term is this year. So
yeah, but being a bad person has never really
stop someone.
Yeah,
right?
That's actually the kind of the juxtaposition of this whole situation is that you would think when certain allegations or just you kind of come to find out someone's really not a good person, you would think that would be a career ender, but if anything, it's sometimes a career booster.
Right.
So I honestly, when it comes down to politics, especially after the last 4 years, nothing really surprises me. So as we're sitting here it's over for him or whatever, he could be well on to greatness after this situation.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that he's already using Republican talking points, he's blaming cancel culture for this. I just think if the New York State legislature doesn't move to remove him, I just don't see a formidable opponent taking him down.
It's also funny how people who are always blaming cancel culture are the very people who actually need to be canceled. They're always so outraged by cancel culture when it's you actually deserve to be canceled. So
yeah, that's so true. And this whole Dr. Seuss thing that people have been wrapping around for cancel culture. I'm these were books we'd never even heard of that the company made a decision by themselves.
Dr. Seuss made a decision to cancel their own book.
Right.
Or the situation with Pepe Le Pew with Space Jam.
Right. Essentially, I gotta go back.
They're taking him out of Space Jam because he represents rape culture.
Well, first off, I don't even think they should be using those old cartoon characters anyways. That's just my hill I'm going to die on. I think they should use the new cartoons.
Worry about the real people, real life people who are predatory and rapey, not cartoon characters. Granted, yeah, Pepe Le Pew was a little aggressive in his approach, but he's a cartoon character.
It's just with the Kentucky you were talking about. This is what you're worried about?
Yes.
This is what you're concerned about? Cartoon
it's
in children's books? Come on.
I feel like it's kind of chosen stupid things, man. Like instead of like real things.
It's like here, like we're like, look, it's almost like, look, we're doing something about it, but it's like you're not. It's to make it seem like you're listening, but again, like I said, you're not listening.
It's performance.
Because it's just to say you get a grasp of it, but your actions kind of prove otherwise because it's kind of the opposite of what people are asking you to do.
Yeah, no, for sure. So let's move on. Let's talk less about cancel culture. Let's move on to our headline section. So Mexico is looking to legalize weed. It's going to be the largest country by population to do so. So it could be very possible that the United States could be surrounded by 2 countries that have legalized weed. So shout out to them.
It's only a matter of time for the states to do it at a federal level.
I am still shocked that Biden didn't run on legalizing marijuana. Like,
I'm sure, for anyone who has issues appealing to young voters, it's like, I don't know why none of you, like, if you're have trouble with that, just say that you're going to give them weed. Just say that you're going to make weed legal. That seems like weed and student loans. You're going to get all of the young people that you say don't come out to vote.
And if you mean it, like if you say it and you mean it and you actually do it, of course, but.
Yeah, and like it's a bipartisan issue, at least on a state level, because Republican states have it legalized, Democratic states have it legalized. So if Congress decides not to do it, or if the Republican senators decide not to pass it, that's on them. That's a campaign issue right there in 2022.
Mm-hmm. Boom. Yeah, I think that what is it? I think it has to be moved. I think it's like a Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 drug. I think they have to like commission a study or something to have it removed, and then that'll like create the pathway in order to legalize it. But just get that done. That's an easy
it's like
win.
You find time to do everything else.
Right.
And you have time. You find time to fight against things that really you shouldn't even be fighting against. So yep. I no longer want to hear the excuses that, oh, it takes time or there's more other things that we need to get to or whatever the case is. And the simple fact of the matter is I'm kind of leaning towards, and I feel like I shouldn't really be kind of like surprised with myself, but I don't really feel like Biden had any intention of doing it. It wasn't like, and not to say that it's not, again, I don't know him like personally on a personal level. I don't know if he really has an issue with it or not, but I just want to say that I really feel like it was just,
he said anything to get elected.
Yes, and he also kind of ran his campaign, not more so on the fact that like I'm really trying to do something, but more so I'm just opposite of like what you've had for the last 4 years, or I'm trying to be opposite of Trump. And for a lot of people, that was enough. So now you find him in the White House and you're like, oh, well, why aren't you going to do this type of thing? You're going to do this type of thing. And he's like, I wasn't really planning on it. Because I don't know why it's not like it's. And that in student loans, like I really just don't really understand the big, like to do nothing with student loans was kind of like off-putting. Like I thought like at least he was going to do something, but for you to just completely ignore it as well as like the weed situation.
Yeah, I don't know if he ran on the student weed thing or legalizing weed, student weed.
Yeah.
He ran on it.
Maybe he should have run on student weed.
Maybe, but no, I mean that's an easy one. That just seems like such an obvious one. I think that I'm sure that the House already has something drawn up or plans to draw something up to legalize weed, but
right.
That should be an easy one, especially if that might even have a chance of getting some bipartisan support.
Well,
because
if you present it from like a capitalistic like as a like an industry opportunity, which is something we talked about before. If anything, if it's not about, if not like you want to do it because it's really not like that big of a deal, also do it because then it would like generate,
They could use legalizing marijuana to fund the infrastructure bills that they're trying to pass, because American infrastructure is so bad.
I mean, that's the plan for New Jersey. New Jersey just legalized weed, and that's kind of the plan that we're going to use it to kind of cover these budget shortfalls that we have.
Yeah, I think like
it's so obvious.
And I can't understand why a state like New York doesn't have legal. It comes down to Cuomo.
Cuomo.
He has the majority, the super majority. He doesn't need one Republican vote to pass this bill. They don't need nothing. He just doesn't want to get it done.
He just doesn't want to do it. It's held up at his desk, I believe. I believe Cuomo is like the main reason why weed hasn't been legalized there yet. But New York would be a perfect example of
And
that,
we
right?
have like such a big budget shortfall, like in New York, and we keep asking federal help when we could help ourselves. Like I'm not saying like pull yourself up by the bootstrap, but there is an untapped industry that it's safer than alcohol. You know, like weed is a lot safer than drinking alcohol. Like it has more health benefits than alcohol ever had. Like so, like I don't understand. Like the argument against the criminalization of marijuana is literally racism.
I think it's two
That's
things.
the
I think it's two
criminalization of
things.
of drugs.
I think it's two things. So I think yes, part of it is racism. So like for example, a cop can say as you walk by your vehicle, "I smell weed in the car,"
Marijuana,
or if they're walking past your house, which happens a lot, which a lot of no-knock warrants get issued, is they smell weed in the house. They don't have to prove anything. They can just have to say that they did it.
But that was kind of like the issue with Oregon, because when Oregon decriminalized like most drugs, a lot of people were like, oh, that's not good because now out addicts. But if you really look at what they were doing, it wasn't to it was to decriminalize it, but more also offer some like help and rehab for addicts. And I think if the argument was, oh, we don't want to legalize certain drugs or whatever because we don't want people to be addicts, I would believe it, but that's not true, because then it's like when people they treat like drug problems not like as the health crisis that it is, but as a criminal problem. So it's like if you really cared about people being addicted, which a lot of people are addicted to opioids, we have an opioid problem in this country,
right?
You would do something or offer help to people who are presenting with addictions instead of sending them to jail and for X amount of time, and as soon as they get out, it's not like their addiction just goes away. As soon as they get out, they, fall back into the same old habits, and it's just a repeat cycle. So it's really just about criminalizing and keeping people, or just, I guess, using it as an excuse to keep arresting people or putting them in jail.
Well, you kind of touch upon the second thing that I think why weed hasn't been like pushed on a federal level to be legalized is that if you have like a chronic issue, let's say your knees hurt or your back hurts, and you go to a doctor is most likely going to prescribe you like a painkiller, like a pill. And depending how extreme your pain is, that pill can be very addictive, leading to the opioid crisis and whatnot. If people can just turn to weed now as an alternative to painkillers, that's going to really hurt that industry a lot too. So I think like those two things, like criminal justice and I think like the pharmaceutical industry is probably not pushing for it.
I also feel like we have to stop we just have to accept the fact that it's like America really doesn't care about people and their problems. Like they don't care that people have like real life addiction problems, or like people really struggle with drugs, or like you said, people get prescribed painkillers for a real reason and then end up getting addicted to it, and then that thus contributes to the opioid crisis. And it's like you would think like, damn, so many people are struggling, so many people have this problem. Why doesn't America just help them? And it's because we're giving America too much credit. America really doesn't care that people are addicted to opioids.
They don't.
It's like we know that they are, but you want us to do something about it? No. Why should we do that? It's like, it kind of falls on deaf ears. Like we keep saying, oh yeah, it would be great for people. Yeah, we know this logically that it would be good for people. But then it takes away the opportunity for you to, like you said, pull somebody over and say, hey, I smell weed in your car, or, bombard somebody's house. Like, oh, I think you have weed in the house or whatever. It's one less way that we can harass people, especially Black people, Black and brown people.
Yeah, like if you research the history of weed and why weed become illegal in the U.S. I think in the 1930s, it became legal in the U.S. It's based off the fact that Black people was enjoying it.
Thank you. Yeah.
And that was it. That there was no like superior medical study. It was like an aggressive ad campaign by white people to get it criminalized because. And I feel like the reason why there's such a big push to legalize weed now is because white people be using it.
Opioids, for example. You have a whole bunch of people who had like heroin addictions, and all types of problems. When that shit started to trickle into the white communities and little suburban white kids were getting addicted to pills and having all types of, then it became
now it's a national issue.
Now it's a crisis. Now it's an epidemic that we have to tackle. And that's just really the crack and cocaine. Cocaine and crack are the same drug. But when, white people started to do cocaine, it was like, oh, it's, it's the classier drug. It's the whatever. It's the same drug. But one is more frequently used by, people that are black and white and versus white. But the opioid addiction problem became a problem because it was like you found like little 16-year-old, 17-year-old suburban white kids who were overdosing and then it was like, oh, we have to do something about it. It's a national crisis.
A big issue.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, hopefully at least more states legalize it. I don't think we're going to get anything on a federal level unless unless we remove the filibuster or get a supermajority in 2022. But hopefully more states legalize it until the point where, enough states do it where it's like de facto legalized on a national level.
Yeah.
So, all right, we'll see about that. So moving down headlines, shout out to the greatest president ever, Donald Trump. He issued a cease and desist to the RNC to stop using his name and likeness. So, yeah.
Yeah. He's trying to get paid.
Basically.
If you're gonna use my name, like you got to pay me like everybody else does. I'm good. Like that's how he's made his money the last 10, 15 years. It's just been licensing his name.
Yeah, that's really it. That's
gonna have the RNC try to get off over him. Come on.
You know what, man? I hate to say this, but mad respect to him for doing that.
Yeah. He's a businessman at the end of the day. That's who he was when he became the president. And that's before he became the president. That's really who he is at the core. So, I'm not surprised. I'm not shocked either.
Let me ask you guys this question: do we think that Trump's actually going to be as active as he said he was in the 2022 midterm elections?
He did say he's gonna primary a few people. He's gonna back primary challenges for a few people. I think the senator from Alaska, the lady, she's getting
Murkowski. Yeah,
Murkowski.
He's definitely gonna primary her. Like he's gonna primary a few people. A few people not safe, man. A few people not safe. I think Liz Cheney might get primaried. Like, yeah, they're gonna. It's gonna happen. He's gonna do it.
I don't think this is the.
I don't know how effective he'll be. To be honest,
he's very effective. Like I don't know because in Georgia we saw that it kind of didn't work with him with him basically trying.
It's one thing, him not being on the ticket, right? It's if he's not there, what effect does he really have?
I mean, he also did tell people in Georgia that the election is a sham, it's a fraud. Don't vote in it.
Vote. But it was still an high turnout, even though he said that. Like it was a tremendous turnout on the Republican side too. Like it wasn't like I don't know, but we'll see what his real influence is. I just know that he's a money raiser for them. Like so,
yeah.
And he has a war, and he has a crazy war chest too for himself. Like with campaign donations that he got when he tried to challenge the election that weren't used for the legal challenges that he just kept.
You think he's going to use that for other candidates, not for himself though?
I think he's going to use it for himself.
Yeah, because I don't think you can use money that's been raised for political campaign for personal gain.
You're not supposed to. But this is Trump. All right, he can find a way to write it like, oh, I was giving a speech in Kansas. I had to stay at the Ritz-Carlton in Kansas, of course. Oh, I had to, spend this money to, so that I eat these, 5-star restaurants over because I'm in Wyoming for some reason. Like, I feel like he'll find a way to get around that and just kind of expense the way that a lot of other business people can do with these sort of things.
I wouldn't put it past him, so I kind of agree.
I mean, and let's be real. He's been doing this since he was president. In Marcus's example, that speech won't be held in Kansas. It'll probably be held at the Trump Resort and Hotel in Jersey or whatever. So he's going to find a way to pay himself, and like we're going to.
Just like he did when he was president, he was paying the Trump organization crazy bread.
Exactly.
Yeah. Secret Service was paying like mad amount of money just to rent rooms in his building. Yep. So
you were paying for that.
Yeah,
courtesy of the American taxpayer.
I did see like this thing where people were making fun of his airplanes. So when he was running for president, he had like the Trump the Airbus jet, and then like he moved on to like the Air Force One. Now he has like this smaller private jet that he's now flying. So people were just kind of making fun of him downsizing from like Air Force One to like a small private jet.
Nah, it's still a private jet. Shit.
It's still a private jet. It doesn't have his name on it. That's true. So moving on here. So Facebook wants U.S. antitrust lawsuits dismissed, arguing that it neither holds monopoly power nor harms consumers. This is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Facebook, I think like all of the big tech companies are now kind of undergoing this antitrust scrutiny now. And Facebook, I mean, given their like hold, they're like between them and Google, they have kind of have this duopoly going on with advertising dollars, and they're gonna fight to say that, oh, we're not, we don't control the market, and we're not as powerful as you guys say you are. But it's like, come on, you guys own three of the biggest platforms in the world between Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. And we can see what harm you guys do just looking at the elections in England and in the US the last few years.
No, but there's also elections that they have influenced, like in the Caribbean, like for Trinidad, for example, like they I forgot who used Facebook to let because in Trinidad and Tobago there's like black people and then there's people that are Indian, and they try to like make black people stay home by telling them their vote didn't really matter, so they shouldn't vote. So there was an increased campaign in Trinidad and Tobago for that, and the black people stayed home, and all the issues that they represented, the Indians went out and vote, and so like that was used because of Facebook. The same thing they did in Myanmar. They the whole genocide in Myanmar. Facebook played a major role in that. Like it's a lot, man. Facebook is the evil corporation, man. Like.
Brazil's another one. I think for the election of Jair Bolsonaro over there, he got elected a lot based on what they were doing on WhatsApp, and just kind of that blasting out messages to people that way. So Facebook saying that they don't harm consumers is like, come on. When you look at what Brazil has had to undergo thanks to Bolsonaro, it's just as bad as what's going on here. Some may even say worse. So that argument isn't going to hold. It shouldn't hold water.
Facebook on WhatsApp is dictator's favorite tool so far.
So let me ask you guys a question now, right? So like, what's the solution here? So if you break up Facebook, meaning that like WhatsApp's gonna be its own private business, same with IG, would that fix the issue though, or would the issue still be there?
The issue would still be there. Like for me, I'm in favor of regulations. Like
right.
I want these places regulated. Like we see what happened when companies don't get regulated. Like. In 1998, there was bills regulating banks. As the time went along, most of those regulations went away. 2008 happened because those regulations wasn't there. So everybody was like, "Oh, big government this, big government that." But we see like the direct implication. Like within less than 10 years of a bill being taken apart, we saw the whole global financial system crash because regulation got removed. Like governments are put in place to regulate stuff. Like as much as we don't want to accept it, that some people don't want to accept it. That's their job, like to protect things like from happening. And we've seen it time and time again where free market entrepreneurs, whatever, abuse things like this. Like like there's no regulation, powerful unions are gone. Like people firing people. Like the Huffington Post in Canada, for example, because the Canadian Huffington Post branch was trying to like become unionized, they all got fired like last week. Because they pushed for the unionization, and that can't be allowed to happen.
No,
corporations are going to do whatever they want, regardless of what it means for the Commonwealth, what it means for the country, and that's why you have to have regulations. You have to have a strong government, and I think breaking them up too also helps. If they don't have as much market power, if you can allow more competition to enter into the space, that also kind of keeps them from being able to kind of do whatever they want. But they have to worry about the competitors coming in and stealing customers from them, stealing engagement and interest from them as well.
Yeah, I actually do think like Amazon and Google are two companies that probably should be broken up, though. I think they're just massively large. They have an incredible amount of power. A lot of it's like what we don't see visually, but I do think they need to be kind of broken up, though.
What's that media group that we talked about? They own Fox. They own like 75% of all local news. Things like that shouldn't be
Yeah.
happening. Things
News
like
Corp and
that.
Sinclair Group.
Yep. Things
Yeah.
like that you can't tell me that you send down a memo that people don't really believe in, and these news reporters are being forced to read them on national TV on to their local people, and because you turn local news because those are the people I used to turn on uh
You look to the
BX.
news.
Mm-hmm.
You look to the news because you feel like the
Yeah,
information
like
that you're
it's
receiving is
BX.
accurate
I think it's
Yeah.
or
called.
informative, and it's going to keep you informed
Yeah, I
on
used to
what's going
watch
on.
this little TV show called BX12. There's like BX12 thing in the morning, like every morning because local news. These people are
Right.
trustworthy. Like they from
Yeah.
the Bronx. Like like you. That's the same thing that happened in small towns. Like you go out, you see these are your little town celebrities. Like you trust
Honestly,
them.
honestly, it wasn't up until recently where I started to feel like the news wasn't trustworthy. But growing up, that's what you turn to. Like you watch the news and you think that the news are just reporting like things that are going on in the world, like and from an unbiased standpoint, like this is the news, like this is what's happening. I'm not giving you my opinion on it. This is what it is. So
Mhm.
the idea that it could possibly be like biased or the information can be tainted by someone's personal views or a collection of people's personal views is dangerous, because if you can't trust the news to report the truth, like who can you really get the truth from
Right.
in terms of what's going on not only here but across the world, and how what's going on across the world or in the world, how it affects your day-to-day life.
Sidebar:
Uh,
Drew Brees just retired.
Goodbye,
Yeah,
good
I saw that.
riddance. Like, yeah,
So yeah,
like,
I just, I remember, like, for me, even like, because we talked about this when Trump was in office, like Fox News. It honestly, and I can't really say that I don't really can't remember off the top of my head if I really like cared about Fox News. Like, I don't really think I had the view that I have about Fox News, like always. But I just always remembered watching the news, like, in the morning, at night, and just feeling like, oh, okay, this is what's going on in New York. This is what's going on in, overseas in the Middle East and stuff like that. So the idea that the news that you're getting is really not all the way right, or it's not just straightforward, it's kind of like sick. So yeah, I do believe that there should be like there should be some regulation. Like it shouldn't just be a free for all where anybody can do anything and say anything. And because whether you want to admit it or not, people are influenced, like, and people get their information from various different sources. Like some people get their information from Facebook and Instagram and the news, traditionally. So it shouldn't just be, oh, well, because it used to be before, like if you get your information from anywhere other than the news, that's kind of on you, because like you shouldn't trust other sources. But if it's affecting the news, then yeah, that's a problem.
yeah, no, for sure. So let's move on to like our next topic here. So this is something I added to the list. Like, it's just race politics. So I've been noticing like a recent trend where like politicians are getting more and more open about their dog whistles. So for example, Lindsey Graham recently came out and said that aid that was given to Black farmers, I believe that was going to be in the COVID relief package. He called that reparations and was like treating it like it was like a bad thing. Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson said that he didn't feel threatened by the rioters that were violently storming the Capitol.
Yep, I saw that.
Yep. Because he said if there were Black Lives Matter or Antifa, even though I don't think Antifa is a real thing. But anyways, if you were Black Lives Matter or Antifa, he would be more full threatened. So
yeah, it's not.
yeah.
FBI. That's from the FBI, by the way. The head of the FBI said it. So the Antifa is not real.
It's not.
They're not.
It's not a real thing.
It's not. But shout out to Republicans or the right wing groups for like creating something out of thin air.
And people not being smart enough to
see that it doesn't exist.
or people being dumb enough to just kind of run with it without really even understanding. Because to be honest with you, I never really understood what Antifa was even implying. Like I didn't know if like I'm assuming it was supposed to be like a group, like Black Lives Matter or whatever. But I never understood why people even thought it was a thing. Like it made no sense to me. But
Yeah, I
That
always
just
took.
goes to show that you can say really virtually anything and people will follow it.
People pick it up and it just blows up now.
Just run with it. Yeah, I always took like Antifa as like Black Lives Matter refers to the black people protesting, Antifa refers to the white people protesting. That's why I always kind of took the two as basically. But I could be wrong. I don't know. All right, moving on to the next section, Democratic leadership. So the House is voting on bills to expand background checks to all gun sales and extend the window for checks from 3 days to 10 days. So shout out to them. Biden
is past the Senate.
No, it's not.
Them up.
It won't. No.
Clap it up.
Clap them up. Not getting past the Senate. Not with Republican Joe Manchin in charge.
Biden's Build Back Better program is going to address infrastructure, climate change, healthcare, income inequality, and other issues. Going to cost another trillions of dollars. That's going to be spread over a couple of decades or over a decade. But as Ryan said, it's probably not going to get past the Senate.
There's actually some leeway to get something done as far as like this big government program, just because like Republicans can eat off of that. So you can create jobs, you can create kind of industries in those places. I know that they're ideologically stand against any sort of support for government spending, but I think there's something in there for them as well. If they want to take them up on it. I don't know who the 10 senators are. I can think of maybe 3 that might be interested in that, but surely somebody would be like, hey, you know, if this could get me like a government's office building built in, I don't know, Louisiana or something, yeah, I'll sign up for it. I don't know. I don't know who's going to step up or who would step up.
Pork belly or whatever that thing is called once they get that to bring home to their people.
Yeah, there's pork belly spending.
Yeah. I mean, couldn't the same argument have been made by the COVID relief bill that was just passed? Like, it does benefit Republicans in their states as well.
That they're trying to take credit for now? I forget who the senator was, but someone was like, "Oh yeah, we passed something that's going to help all the restaurant owners who have been struggling during this COVID pandemic season." And it's like, you voted against the bill. How are you taking credit for this?
How are you taking credit for it? Another thing I love, there's the opposite end of it, that Republicans are blaming Democrats for not being bipartisan on this bill, as if like we held a gun to Republicans' head. Is like, don't you dare support this bill.
All the time in the world to sign on, and it's our fault.
Oppose. That's the
right.
That's the motto, and shit, they're more effective at opposing than Democrats.
So this one is actually a pretty big deal. So House Democrats are going to end a consulting ban for primary challenges. The reason why this is a big deal is because so basically like groups that support like let's say the Justice Democrats. So what AOC is a part of. House leadership or Democratic leadership kind of prevented like those outside consulting groups from participating or receiving like Democratic congressional committee funds. I think it's called the DCCC. I think what it is. So what this ban does is that it removes that consulting ban so that we can now see a lot more progressive challenges in the primaries, probably next election. So this could have like a pretty big deal, and this could probably move the House a little bit more to the left. So we'll see how this one goes.
Let's see.
And as Ryan mentioned before, Biden is not pushing the issue on removing the filibuster. So shout out to President Biden. All right. So Marcus,
shout out to the centrists, man.
Shout out to them, man. Marcus, I'm going to pass the mic over to you to discuss why we need a wealth tax.
Thanks. So I'm going to rewind real quick just to 2019 when Elizabeth Warren got an endorsement from the New York Times to be the president of the United States, or the Democratic nominee for the presidential nomination. And one of the first things that she did upon receiving that was put out her wealth tax proposal. And then the media just spent the next few months just kind of shitting all over her for having the audacity to ask wealthy people to pay more in taxes. And you know how it turned out. She got outflanked to the left by Bernie Sanders, wound up dropping out of the race. But she's back in 2021. She put out her wealth tax proposal, and it comes right after a year where we saw 657 billionaires generate 1.3 trillion in profits last year. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of, we can get into the details of this bill. It's the proposed tax would generate, I think, 3.75 trillion in revenue over a 10-year period and would only affect 75,000 of the wealthiest households in the country. So my first question to you guys, and this is, one of the threads of opposition to a wealth tax, is if the United States, or, should we be concerned with billionaires, how they feel about a wealth tax and how they kind of line up or can kind of align the media against something like this? Should we be concerned about this at all?
No, we shouldn't care.
We shouldn't
care
care.
what
We should be.
Billionaires care about. Like billionaires can live off $1 billion and be good for the rest of their life.
Right.
At some point, it's I forgot who said it. Like the world has enough for everybody's needs, but not for everybody's greed, bro.
Yeah.
Like such a small. It's less than 1% of people. They try to always say it's the 1%, but it's crazy. It's like 0.00025 percent of people that control most of the country's wealth. Like that's sickening to think about.
Yeah.
I think
no tax.
Marcus, I think your question kind of touches on a deeper issue. And I think like Ryan was kind of, I mentioned this earlier, it's just regulation. Billionaires have a lot of say in politics and also in our media as well, right? We kind of saw it when GameStop, that stock kind of went up, and we just kind of saw like billionaires kind of overreact to that type of thing.
Shouts to Leon Cooperman, yes.
Billionaires just have like so much say and sway in politics. Yes, we do need like a wealth tax, but I do think like the deeper issue is that we need to kind of like reduce or limit a billionaire's influence like in our day-to-day politics, really. Like getting rid of the super PACs, for example, could be a good first step. So I mean, I support the bill, but I do think like pushing to remove PACs might be like a much bigger issue to tackle.
I don't think we should care about how they feel, but I think we should definitely pay attention to how they, like you said, like how they can have a say so, or how like them being their position as a billionaire can have an impact on the things that happen. Because like Ryan said, ironically enough, a lot of people think that it's just politicians that have a hand in how these things play out, and that's just not the truth. That's just not the reality of the situation. And more often than not, like sometimes billionaire outrage and you would think like it's really not that big of a deal, or you have enough money and you shouldn't really care, but that's just not how it works. Like they do get outraged that they are being asked to pay higher taxes or even propose to pay higher taxes, and sometimes that outrage can affect how things play out because we still have this wealth gap in this country.
Yeah, and I'll say this, right? Let's just I mean, we know that Bill Gates, for example, like Bill Gates donates a lot of his wealth to good causes, right? He's really big and behind like pushing like a vaccine push. Yeah. But billionaires like Jeff Bezos, what has he done on the philanthropy side? We can't really point to anything really. He's like the richest man in the world, and we can't really point to anything that he's really done or really pushed for anything. So I think this kind of shows that we do need like a wealth tax because you have people like Jeff Bezos that are just hoarding their money.
And to put it in plain terms, like a lot of times the plainest way to like paint it is that a lot of them have money that they'll never even be able to spend. Like it's right. Not like you really need this money to survive. And I'm not saying like, I'm not saying like, okay, like actually that is what I'm saying. But I was gonna say, like I was saying, that maybe they don't need all. Yeah, that is what I'm saying. But it's the gatekeeping of wealth that you're not gonna be able to spend in your lifetime. And so the idea that you're trying to hoard money that is ultimately going to go somewhere because you're not gonna be able, like once you die, I don't know how because if you're talking about Bill Gates, like Bill Gates has said, he's not giving it to his kids, he'll donate it to charity. A lot of it just creates, generational wealth for their kids and their kids and their kids. And it really doesn't benefit them for them to fight so hard to keep it, if you get what I'm saying. Because it's not like you're going to be able to spend it all or really benefit from it all. Like you have enough and then some. So the idea that maybe you can take some of what you won't be able to spend and distribute it to people who could benefit from it is kind of like, it really shows the evilness in some of these billionaires.
So let's just say, like Bill Gates say, "Oh, I'm not leaving all of that to my kids." Bill Gates' net worth is $96 billion. Like he leaves $3 billion to his child, whatever how much kids he have, 3-4 billion. That could set them up and their grandchildren and everybody else down the
But
line.
he has said that
Because money creates money. Come
Yeah,
on
it
now.
does.
He's not gonna die and leave all his money. Come on, we're not stupid. He's not those kids have seen couple of those
But
$1
they
billion.
have money though. You think they don't
Yeah.
have money?
It's
But what I'm saying is the
money
damage is
create
already
money. Yeah,
the damage is already done
Yeah.
because it's like you already have money. So it doesn't matter if your father leaves you money or not. Like it's not like, oh, my dad's not leaving me billions, so I'm poor. That's not the reality of the situation.
Right. It's not Prince Harry.
No.
Even the point with, you made a good point about Bill Gates. Like, even though he does give away a lot of his money, like, wouldn't it just be better if that money was taxed? Because think about, him giving away billions of dollars when we have how many people setting up like GoFundMe pages just to pay for tuition or medical causes or all these other things that they need. Like, we constantly run into these kinds of issues where it's like, it's great that you're giving away billions of dollars or you're pledging to do these. I think there's like a pledge that a lot of billionaires do. They said they're going to give away their money
But that sounds good.
It sounds good.
A part of it is like, are you saying that because you're really going to do it, or does it sound good?
So the thing that you got to understand when they create these philanthropies, I think John Oliver had an excellent segment on it. They control that's philanthropy, so the money is still theirs to decide what to do with it. It's not like they're giving it back. They're like the one controlling it. Like they have control over it. It's a good way to hide money,
And I'm not saying that, and for me, I'm not saying, oh, I'm saying for me, it's more so like you have more than you need. There are people who don't even have what they need.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Like you own multiple houses, multiple cars, you do all this stuff. There are people who don't have homes, who lose their jobs because they don't have reliable transportation to get there. So it's not about a greed thing where it's like, oh, we want, poor people to have more money because, oh, we want them to have multiple houses too. It's like, we just want them to have just the bare necessities. And I just feel like anybody who could say, people are not deserving of the bare necessities is like, that's crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
especially because there's people at the bottom, and we're not talking about adults. There's children. Like there's people who have children that are without. Like kids are homeless. Kids go to sleep hungry. That's not. And all you have to do is tax money that you're probably never going to spend anyway. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely a control thing.
Crazy.
It is, and I started off with that question because just kind of like taking in some of the reactions to the wealth tax. It's kind of like, are these serious issues? Like one of the things that's come out is, oh, if you tax wealth, then you're going to disincentivize saving and wealth accumulation in this country, which is, I guess, which is in a lot of people's minds, that's what kind of drives forward the economy and drives forward kind of innovation in the United States. But is that something?
It's an idea that trickle down economics still works. That's basically it.
Yes, it's still kind of clinging to that old kind of classical kind of theory that, just we haven't seen any evidence of it in reality.
It's a stupid economic theory. Like the more you think about trickle down economics, the more you learn about economics, the more you study economics, you realize like this is actually a nuts idea.
Yeah,
to actually think about.
Crazy. It's a crazy idea.
Yes.
But another idea though that's come out of this, and I want to know what you guys think about this. Do you think that a wealth tax would make the U.S. less desirable to be than other countries? And I bring that up because one example that's usually cited is France. France had a wealth tax, I think, in the early 2000s, and they saw an exodus of billionaires to Portugal and Belgium because of this wealth tax. And now opponents of this of a United States wealth tax are saying that, oh, we can't do this because all the billionaires will just leave.
Did it crash the France economy? No,
I don't know. I've never heard nothing about the French economy crashing beyond
if they want to leave,
they want to leave.
If they want to leave, they can leave. Like because it is what it is. Like just like they said with the car industry, they said it all the time. Like there's gonna be a max, but you want people. Your things are gonna be sold in the United States. The job market is gonna be in the United States. You want to be in the United States. It's just a simple fact. Like most billionaires across the world have apartments in New York City, even though they're billionaires in India. Most of them have residents in the New York area. Like, it doesn't matter that they're still hiding their money in the Caymans, or still setting up fake corporation in Maryland and Delaware where they can do it up for free. Like, but they're still doing it. It's a stupid idea to think that if you put some regulation, if you try to tax people, the honest tax, that in a way that Trump paid $750 in taxes, bro, and gets $75 million back. Like, come on now.
Yeah.
Man, just writing off earcut. Yo, Keith, go write your earcut off, bro, on your next taxes that you filed.
That's fair.
That's a good point. That's a good point with the hair. I forgot. It's funny bringing up these like wealth questions and Donald Trump's like some of the tax shenanigans that he was employing come up. Yeah, but no, I think that these are just like, again, I think the wealth tax, some of the value that it'll deliver. Again, it's a 2% tax on households between 50 million and $1 billion, and a 4% billionaires tax on any net worth above $1 billion. Which is our numbers that for me, I can't even fathom those numbers. Like $1 billion, it's such a large number. So it's like, yeah,
I think it's also pretty
like what's the harm here?
It's kind of like pretty shitty, even though like if you really look at it, the fact that rich people kind of are even getting like tax cuts anyway, or is that kind of like when it comes down to taxes, like they kind of like skate by. Meanwhile, like you have other people who, like, if you file your taxes wrong by accident, like you're heavily penalized the next year. Like you actually don't know if you fucked up your taxes until it's kind of like too late. And that's like that's just regular people. But then it's like you're arguing about, or we're arguing, or even making the argument that rich people shouldn't be taxed. Like you don't, like, it's kind of like, for me, it's like I don't really care too much about rich people problems, because in essence they're not problems.
They're not.
We kind of forget one thing whenever we talk about like rich people is patriotism. And that is like, if we pass this wealth tax, the fear that billionaires, or the 1% of the 1% is going to leave the country. There should be like a patriotic argument there. It's like, you made your money in this country, you benefited from the loss from this country.
That's why they're not leaving.
You know, you got to get back to this country that kind of brought you up into that status. It's kind of like Obama's controversial statement was like, you didn't build that, right? Where the Republicans kind of jumped in that statement. And it's true. Like, you know, the American system brought you up and gave you that wealth. And it's like, you should do your part as a patriot to give that money back through the form of taxes back to our country so that we can benefit and we can grow too. We're not taking away your entire wealth.
Exactly right. And if you're going to leave too, one of the things that's actually in the wealth tax proposal is that there's a 40% exit tax for citizens that renounce their citizenship and leave, which I think is a really smart thing. Because again, if you're going to complain, like, oh, we're going to leave, we're going to go to other countries that have lower tax rates.
Yeah, pay
us all to leave.
Yeah,
pay what you hold,
hand it over, which I think is a brilliant thing to throw in there as well.
Because that's the thing. That's the thing about it. Like, people always want to threaten to be like, oh, like if that happens, like I'll leave. But it's like, if there was kind of like a penalty for leaving, being that you made your money here, and we were like, oh yeah, you made your wealth here, you can leave if you want to, but you're gonna pay us back for your success or for your wealth. And if you're arguing about a 2%, 3%, tax or whatever, and then you have somebody telling you, oh, we're gonna tax you 40% to leave, hell no, you're not leaving.
No.
If you don't want to pay 2-3%, what makes you think that you're gonna be so willing to give up 40%? Like, so yeah, I think that if that's going to be the result of it, like, oh, everybody just is like, yeah, I'm gonna just pack my shit up and leave. Yeah, okay, yeah, leave. But you have to come up off some of that money in order to do so. And then we'll see if they leave or not. And I'm gonna go ahead and tell you they're not.
Yeah, I think Warren should definitely like pass, at least push to get this bill passed. But again, I don't think like the Senate Republicans are going to be on board with this.
There's no way they'll get the support. But again, I think for Democrats, there's always value in kind of being seen as the side pushing for this kind of stuff. Agreed. And I love that she's continuing to fight for it, even though it did cost her. Probably it may have cost her the election in 2020. or things like this kind of cluster in 2020. But yeah, I don't see the downside in pushing something like this. And then who knows? Maybe it kind of gets the conversation started so that we can actually have a wealth tax in this country. Maybe it doesn't have to be an annual thing. Maybe it's a one-time thing, but it's something that we certainly need to address income inequality. But yeah, that's all I have on wealth tax. I'm gonna pass the mic back to Kev, and what's next?
All right, so I know we're a little bit over, guys. I apologize. Please crucify me or Ryan on Twitter, but we're gonna wrap it up soon. I do want to give a special shout out to one of our good fans on Twitter. His name is Dan M. Panam. I hope I pronounced that last name correctly.
Shouts to Dan.
So Dan, man, he always like every episode, he's always hitting up the DMs like, I hate your takes, or I love your takes, or like you miss like this or that. So I mean, like hearing that kind of like motivates me to keep doing this. You know, it's like people actually like listen, to like support it. So shout out to Dan, man. So last podcast, we did give a little shout out to Pennsylvania's Lieutenant Governor Fetterman for running. He decided he wanted to run for Pennsylvania's soon-to-be open Senate seat in 2022. So Dan hit me up as soon as he heard that. He was like, nah, man, you guys can't support him. And he kind of like told me that Fetterman, the Lieutenant Governor, has a pretty questionable history when it comes to race. And then one thing that's kind of pointed out, I recommend everyone go to his Wikipedia page, but when he was mayor of this small PA town, he kind of pointed a shotgun at a black man that he thought was a criminal and then got into his truck and then chased him down. Okay. And he was the mayor, not the cop. So I didn't know that, and I'm from Pennsylvania.
No, I've been like pushing Dan Fetterman for a long time, but I've been pushing a racist. That's crazy.
Right.
That's crazy.
And I told Dan that I was like, dude, this guy's like a progressive. I like him.
How long ago was this?
This is probably like 2013, 2014 is when this happened. Look, a person can change. Yes. I'm not saying that we should cancel Fetterman. A person can change. I'm always a believer that people can change, right?
But when it comes down to race and racism, do you feel that way? I'm a strong believer that if someone exhibits racist or like predatory behavior, like if you're a rapist or you're a racist, that cannot be changed. Like that's who you are at the core. Because I feel like if you truly weren't a racist or you truly didn't have like racist ideologies and thoughts, you wouldn't do racist stuff. Like regular everyday people, like there are white people who are not racist.
Facts there are.
Oh yeah, no, big facts.
And they don't do racist stuff because they're not racist. You can't sit here and tell me, oh, I did some racist shit a few years ago, but that's not who I am. So then why'd you do it?
Right. And
that's a fair point.
Carly, you made a really good point there. And so what Dan said is that as a podcast, we should back Malcolm Kenyatta. He's a state representative of Pennsylvania. He's also going to run for that contested Senate seat. So I'm going to put my support behind. I don't know how much weight that's going to have, but I'm going to put my support behind Kenyatta as well. So shout out to Dan for calling us out on that.
Shout out to Dan. Yeah, we'll pass along our what you expect stamp of approval. Kenyatta.
Right. Yeah, we gotta get like we gotta start a campaign for him, at least on Twitter.
Yeah.
All right, so Scotus is going to start hearing arguments so that college students can be compensated by the NCAA later this month. So hopefully they win that case.
NCAA is a slavery organization.
They get free education, Ryan. That's good enough. I'm joking.
I mean, isn't it?
Slaves get free meal.
Okay.
But I'm saying that's been their argument. That's been their argument. Like we give you scholarships. We make millions off. We make millions off of you, but you get to go to college for free. And then when you do the numbers, it doesn't add up. Like a scholarship is like thousands of dollars. Like depending on what school you go to.
An overpriced tuition.
Right.
What they major in is not even that great.
And you make millions.
General studies degrees.
Because nobody encourages them to go out and really try for. I think a lot of it's funny to me because all the college athletes I know have the most basic majors
because they're not there for.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
they're not sold on the idea that you're here to be like the student athlete bullshit is really just a cool, catchy thing to say. But it's like they're not really encouraged
Not going
to
to
go
class.
out, to go, no, not even go out, but to really go. I've never heard of a student athlete that's a pre-med major. I've never heard of a student athlete that's like a rigorous, that's in like a rigorous program. It's always like the flyby majors, the floating in the wind majors, where it's like, yeah, I could get a job after I graduate, but that's not what I'm here for. I'm here for sports.
Yeah, no, I mean, good point. Yeah, they should be compensated.
Yes,
sure.
at least allow. And it's funny to me because I remember like the idea that like you can't even benefit, like you can't even make money off of your likeness. Like it's me, like it's me. Like why can't I make money off of? I feel like at the very least, it's like they should be able to be compensated for like maybe, or at least the opportunity to kind of like brand themselves and make themselves into, like, other college students are allowed to have YouTube channels and endorsement deals and sponsorships from major companies if you have a following. And being that they're basically instant celebrities through college sports, why would, like, I don't feel like that's fair that I'm not then allowed to kind of take that and go off of it, because I'm not going to be, realistically speaking, they're not all going to the league.
Yeah, very.
You're not going off to, like, you're not gonna like propel into stardom after you graduate college if you don't go to the league.
It sounds like Carly's actually doing the argument for the United States and to get the college players played. Like she's on the legal team, because that's exactly what they're saying. Like everything that you said is exactly what they want. What they're going to argue in front of the Supreme Court, and
like that Olivia J girl. Her mom lied to get her into college, and she had a whole YouTube channel, sponsorships, endorsements. She was making money. And I go out and you asked me to come here. You recruited me. You wanted me to be here. You wanted me to play for your school. And you make millions off of me. Your program thrives because of me. And I'm not really asking you per se to pay me necessarily to give me a paycheck, but at least allow me to create my own stream of income and my own source of revenue simply off of being me.
Right.
So I that's what I didn't understand. I'm not necessarily arguing that they're allowed to get like paychecks, even though, I mean, we could set that argument up too. We could really argue about it. But at the very least, if you're not going to pay me for maybe my jersey sales or putting seats in the stadiums or whatever, but it's crazy how you can tell me that I can't profit off of being me. And that's how a lot of college students are making, like, a lot of people are making money. Not even college students, a lot of young adults are making money that way.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great argument there. So I can't top that. That's a really good argument. But moving on to my hill for this week, Joe Biden's dog. So if we're going to cancel cartoon characters, if we're going to cancel,
no dog
Mr.
slander,
Potato
bro.
Head.
We're not doing dog slander here. We're a dog-friendly channel.
Bro.
Come on.
I will leave this pod right now like how Piers Morgan walked off.
I will say, though, I have like a hot take. I will say, though, I do believe the only exception is like police dogs. I believe police dogs can be trained to be racist, but that's just my opinion.
Well, it's funny you say that because Joe Biden's two German Shepherds.
But it kind of makes sense.
That's kind of
makes. I ain't never seen one cat biting anybody during the civil rights era.
I ain't never seen no cats.
Are vicious animals. What are you talking about?
Don't do this. Do not do this. We don't slander cats over here. We don't slander cats and dogs.
Cats are trash.
But
cats are horrible.
Cats are the worst.
We're not going to do this. We're not going to do this.
I just want to apologize to my dog if he hears this. If you listen to the podcast.
Your dog is cool because your dog is a domestic dog that lives in your home. And if we're talking about police dogs, those are different. Like, I don't feel like police dogs, if you could train the police force to be racist, you can definitely train police dogs to be racist. Oh, there's a black person over there. Sick 'em. That's exactly what's going on, and you're not going to convince me otherwise.
That's a wild take,
Brian Griffin in Family Guy is racist too. That's another topic. That's who should be getting canceled.
Oh wow!
We won't get into.
So like I thought my hill was bad, but you guys was like took it to a whole nother level. I appreciate that.
It gets worse. Like that's what we learned. The hills get worse.
Right. So we're canceling cats, and then also dogs are racist.
Yeah.
But anyways, Joe Biden's dogs, they bit a Secret Service agent. Instead of being banished to the pound or locked away to the pound, they were sent to their luxurious home in Delaware for their punishment. So I don't really have much of a hill because Carly taught my hill. So that was kind of it. So
I'm
that's
gonna defend the dogs though and say that you have a lot of people coming in and out. It's a new environment. Maybe he just didn't know better. All right?
No, because I never heard of the Obama dogs doing no shit like that.
It was a Portuguese water dog though. That's barely a dog. Let's be honest.
Oh.
That's a fashion statement.
Come on.
You knew your dogs was coming into the White House. You should have better prepared them. You knew a whole bunch of people. If that's the argument, you knew a whole bunch of people was going to be in and out of the White House. Why you did? You could have. I don't know. I don't like when people. And another thing, like if your dog has tendencies to lash out, like don't be introducing them to new people. Like you gotta ease them into new people. Like that's another thing. Like people be having like aggressive ass dogs. Like he don't bite. Like to you, he don't bite you.
Right.
He gonna bite my ass. He's not gonna bite you. Actually, he's gonna bite me.
I actually hate that question. People ask if my dog bites. It's like he had never bit me, but I don't know about
he's a dog.
He could bite you. Yeah.
He could. It could happen. You touch him the wrong way.
That's a very dumb question. Like, does it bite? I mean, it might. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's an animal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's actually one of my biggest pet peeves. Like here in my neighborhood, you see a lot of people kind of like walk their dogs without a leash. And that just annoys me because your dog can get startled at any moment and it can chase after me because I'm a runner. I like to run by. It can chase after me. I don't know your dog doesn't bite. It's chasing after me. Put your damn animal on a leash. But, whatever. Yeah. That's my hill. I don't know if we're a pro dog podcast or not after this takes.
I am pro dog.
We're pro dog, but we don't like police dogs. There's some nuance there. All right.
Okay, so we don't like German shepherds. Okay, I got it.
I like German shepherds.
It's just the police dogs. If they're trained up by the police,
it's the police canines. If you are a police
shepherds are beautiful dogs.
And I don't want to hear that shit because sometimes people be adopting like dogs that used to be on the force. Because sometimes when dogs retire from the force, I don't know. Like when sometimes dogs can be adopted that used to be police dogs or whatever. I still believe that they're racist. Just because you don't work for the police anymore doesn't mean you're not racist. So I would never.
Wow, the insurrection.
I would never, because you was there, you aided in it, like you played a part. Like we have to hold them accountable too. Like they're not exempt just because they're dogs.
Wow, we're holding dogs accountable now. Wow, of all the hills.
Of all the hills, that's the one I'm gonna die on.
Yeah, shout out to Carly, man, for taking my hill and just like, nah, this hill is not big enough. All right, guys. So that's all I have for the podcast. Again, if you like it, please, like our podcast, give it a rating of 5 stars. And if you really do like it, please share it with like friends or family so you can like help grow this thing. I want to give a special shout out to my co-host here. Give a special shout out to producer Yao behind the scenes. That's really all I have for today. And we're out.